Greetings and welcome to the Buffalo Review TV. I'm Tiffany Channer and thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Tara Hark. Coming up on our show, Assembly Democrats propose a tax on Uber and Lyft rides, FSA have announced their upcoming fashion show, The Golden Era, and Lloyd has officially ended their contract with Buffalo State. All that and more on the Buffalo Review TV.
Now, from the campus of SUNY Buffalo State, news and information for Buffalo and the surrounding communities, it's the Buffalo Review TV, produced by Stripes Media.
4 Buffalo State fashion students have been left with a bill to pay after the Financial Aid Office retroactively denied money they were previously approved for. The students were approved for a program to study at FIT in New York City, which allows the seniors to get an associate's degree from the institution, as well as a graduate's from Buffalo State. All 4 students were retroactively denied within the last 2 semesters and received a bill of $9,000 each. The Buffalo State Record picked up the story, and as far as we know, the situation is still ongoing.
The United Students Government announced on March 14, 2018, that the dental clinic will be closing. The dental clinic has been funded by the United Students Government throughout the years of it being on campus, located in the Weigel Health Center. The United Students Government released a statement saying, as of May 20th, 2018, the dental clinic will no longer be in operation. They provide services such as cleaning and dental exams for $14 for undergraduate students and $25 for graduate students.
Buffalo State has began their partnership with Lloyd Taco Truck on January 27, 2014. Since then, has become a staple on campus. After years of service, the Buff State community was saddened to hear that their contract with Buffalo State had officially come to an end. Lloyd will no longer be serving food on campus. Many students were unaware of these developments, but their sadness was met with intrigue as they were introduced to a new food truck, Frank's Gourmet Hot Dogs. The food truck began its partnership with Buffalo State in the fall of 2017 and has taken Lloyd's parking spot near Cleveland Hall.
A Towanda woman was scammed after receiving a message from someone who appeared to be a Facebook friend. The message instructed her to contact another number in reference to a grant worth $150,000 of government money. After connecting this number, you are instructed to purchase a $100 iTunes gift card and responded back with the card information. The police have issued reminders to watch for fake prizes and consult sources personally before continuing compensation. A new tax on Uber and Lyft rides would generate funds for mass transit systems, roads, and bridges. If State Assembly Democrats have their way, the tax waves was included in the Assembly's $170 billion state budget proposal. Ryan Richard has more on the story.
Thanks, Tiffany. Uber and Lyft bringing their services to upstate New York last summer meant added competition for taxi companies. College students without cars immediately took advantage of Uber and Lyft's better prices, but could soon find out good things don't come cheap.
Confusion. I didn't really expect that at all.
Uber and Lyft brought its services to upstate New York last summer as the companies began to expand their reach and customers. As of last month, Assembly Democrats proposed a bill that would impose a $1 surcharge on every ride, boosting taxes on average rides by 8%. In a large area such as Manhattan, the surcharge fee would jump to $2.75 per ride, which ultimately would compete with taxis in upstate and downstate New York. But Uber and Lyft driver Abram Thompson has a different view on it.
I don't think Lyft or Uber itself or any of the rideshare apps are actually trying to put taxis out of business. I just think they're trying to give people a better, easier way to travel. And also that creates jobs in areas.
With this bill on the table, Buffalo State students who use Uber and Lyft still seem to prefer their services over taxis.
Like with the regular commercial drivers, you gotta wait for them like 20 plus minutes. With Uber, it's that quick, and people wanna like go about their business that quick, so I don't think it's a problem.
Even with that $2.75, it's still cheaper than a taxi cab that you would get locally.
The revenues from such fees are intended for the city's subway and bus system, but some customers also feel that this is just another way for business people to add to their pockets. They say their money is going to helping MTA.
I don't believe that at all.
You don't believe that at all?
No.
Why don't you think
Because business people are money hungry, They only care about themselves. They don't care about environment. They don't care about helping others. They don't care about helping the cause or anything that could make the city more efficient, to make life more efficient. All they care about is the goal to cha-ching the money.
The proposed bill is still on the table as Governor Andrew Cuomo and legislative leaders are still trying to find a common ground to agree on. This is Ryan Richards from the Buffalo Review TV.
Former Sex and the City star Cynthia Nixon announced via Twitter that she will challenge Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York's Democratic primary come September. An openly gay liberal activist, Nixon looks to face off against the two-term incumbent with potential presidency aspirations. Nixon, in recent speeches, has called upon Democrats on a national scale, asking them to carve out a strong liberal identity instead of being merely just the anti-Trump party.
Veteran Congresswoman Louise Slatter died Friday. Slatter died a week after falling in her home. The 88-year-old lawmaker had been the first female chair on the House Rules Committee. After 4 decades in public service, Slatter stands as the longest-serving member of Congress in the entire state. The New York Democrat died during her 16th term in the House. A funeral service open to the public will take place Friday, March 23rd at the Eastern Theater's Kodak Hall.
Buffalo Murder Mysteries Company has a new mystery to be solved, and it takes place inside a distillery. Kicking off on Friday, April the 6th, the Murder Mystery Dinner will be headed to the Barrel Factory in the Old First Ward. The experience will come with food and history as each guest learns about the Prohibition era of Buffalo, as well as a mystery to solve that involves each guest being a part of the story. The event lasts 2.5 hours and tickets should be going fast.
If you are looking for something fun to do with friends and family for Easter, then check out the Spring Flower Exhibit. The event is running from March 10th to April 18th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. This has been one of Western New York's favorite traditions to take part in on Easter. Don't miss out on the spring season attitude of gratitude. The Gratitude Garden will be open and have over 22,000 bulbs on display.
As many of you know, Buffalo has been home to some recent movie productions. This has been great for the city as well as fellow Buffalo State alumni David Butler. Kyle Fallon has more on the story. Kyle?
Thanks, Tara. In the past 4 years, there have been 16 films shot in Buffalo. David Butler has been working a lot of these movies, including The First Purge and local Buffalo man William Fichtner's Cold Brook with his partners Seth Black and Amy Kempf. We met up with Butler and Black at their prop house, and they gave us a tour of where the magic happens.
Well, I've been doing theater in Buffalo for about 30 years. I got involved when I was in school at Buffalo State and sort of never looked back. The film thing sort of started out of the blue about 4 years ago, I think. I worked on the American side, and certainly wasn't even on my radar that film would be coming to Buffalo, but that was one of the first films that happened. And then they started to sort of build up and sort of to snowball, and I think we've worked on 16 films now in 4 years, which is kind of nuts. But we love it. So.
I worked on the film Emily in the art department as a set dresser, and then after that, because we're so young as a film community, I was kind of able to pave my own way in the art department, and I kind of just landed into props as we needed a prop master position for one of the pieces that we worked on, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, so in each of these films that we've worked on over these years, and certainly from the theater background, we've gathered things from each film, and it sort of piles up, and then we realize that other cities have prop houses. So trying to sort of get on that, becoming one of the services that we can offer to films coming into Buffalo. If I'm production designing a film, then I'm like having one-on-one conversations with the director. But if we're in a rental position, it's a little bit different. We're more in a sort of a search and rescue kind of thing where we're finding things that for what somebody else is telling us what they're looking for.
Buffalo really has everything. I mean, 100+ years of history are in people's basements, and then all of the different thrift stores. We also have a good variety of furniture stores. Everything's here that we need.
If we've done our job right, we've had a couple actresses that have come on to one of our sets and say, "This is my home," or "This is that character's home." Like, we've created sort of what they had in their mind, And again, it helps them to act because now we've created an environment for them that fits the story that they have in their head or that's on the page.
We are going to take a brief break, but coming up, Tara Hart sits down with Buffalo State professor Anne-Marie Franzwick and Buffalo News investigative reporter Susan Schulman to discuss the difference in fake news and real news. You are watching the Buffalo Review TV.
You're watching the Buffalo Review TV, produced by Stripes Media. You can find out more about our show at our website, thebuffaloreview.wordpress.com, and we welcome your feedback. If you have a question, comment, or story idea, you can email us at thebuffaloreview@gmail.com.
I have here with me avid news consumer and former writer for Business First, Professor Anne-Marie Franzwick, and Buffalo News investigative reporter, Professor Sue Schulman. Thank you so much for coming. Our topic today is fake news. So, Anne-Marie, what constitutes fake news?
I would really like to know the definition. I'm not sure there is a definition. I think there's one pervasive idea that fake news is anything that you don't agree with. I would also argue that fake news is stuff that gets into the media through people who are unscrupulously trying to manipulate coverage. So I'm not sure if there is a definition, a solid definition.
I agree. In my research, there's just so many different ways to define it. Sue, how would you define fake news?
Well, I think what Anne-Marie said is so true. So right now, all of this Trumpism has turned fake news into this almost like glorified, new concept. But actually, the idea of what is real and what is fake news has been going on forever. The basics of newspaper reporting is people are always trying to influence you. They're always trying to get you to write things, to get things in the paper that may or may not be true. So, and it happens. Things have gotten in papers that, haven't been totally accurate or on the news all the time. The other concept of fake news that's always been around is advertorials. Remember, this is something for years newspapers fought, the concept that there'd be an ad in the paper that actually looked like it was news. And have a little line on top that says advertising. So, how is that different than just manipulating the media?
Right.
I think actually, though, the thing that really is the real fake news was the idea, like during the election, when people were writing stories, just making things up. And because of the internet, they were able to just post anything. And because of the way people now get their news through social media, they would see something on Facebook, like, what was the story about Hillary Clinton? Do you remember?
The Pizzagate, where she was accused of promoting a child sex ring or something out of the basement of this pizzeria somewhere in Washington.
Right.
Completely, obviously fabricated. Somebody out there took it seriously and entered the restaurant with the gun.
Right. So that's really fake news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody saying something that Donald Trump doesn't like, or does like, or CNN versus Fox. That's
right.
More of the traditional.
The idea of fake news. Rolling Stones put out an article, A Rape on Campus, and it turned out to be false. There was an anonymous source and it wasn't vetted by the journalist. Would you consider that to be fake news, not verifying facts?
No, I would say that's not verifying facts. I don't know the motivation of the reporter. If the reporter was just lazy and sloppy, that's a problem. There are plenty of those out there. That's a problem, but is that fake news? Did the reporter go out intentionally set on creating that story for their own personal bias? I didn't think so. I thought that it was more laziness and sloppiness on the part of the reporter.
Right.
Yeah, that's just a fireable offense. That's nothing to do with the current conversation on fake news.
Right. But these mistakes that are done by credible journalists, do you think that helps to bolster this claim that people in the current presidential administration are saying that these mistakes and the carelessness? Do you think that helps to bolster the claim about fake news?
Yeah,
I mean, sure, it helps because if people are being critical of an institution and the institution does something wrong, it's going to add to that argument. However, that has like nothing at all to do with the current discussion on and Trump and fake news. So
journalists have not been well respected for a long time. I mean, there isn't a president that's had a loving relationship with the media. I mean, I think George W. Bush, Hillary Clinton, both of them are famously known for not reading the paper. And they say as much. So no president has gotten along with the media. However, all the presidents have respected the media as part of democracy and hasn't gone out and attacked it like the current administration has.
So speaking about government and journalism, in Europe, the government is actually stepping in to regulate this fake news. They're putting up fines. There's all this new legislation. So do either of you think that there's a likelihood that this could happen in the United States, given our strong attachment to the First Amendment?
Well, frankly, I think this is coming from the United States. I think that our administration has kicked open some doors for other autocratic governments to take on the media. And I don't think that, I hope it doesn't swing back to the United States where journalists are actually jailed for anti-state coverage. But I do think that the genesis and the motivation and the movement across the country is being churned up by what's happening in this country through our current administration.
it is, but some of this is more commerce, and there is talk now of regulating Facebook, because Facebook is really where a lot of this stuff is coming from. So I guess I haven't heard anything about infringing upon the First Amendment. And I guess the whole Facebook thing, I know I thought of that yesterday when they were talking about regulation of media, of Facebook. Are there any First Amendment issues in that? But I don't think anybody's talking about seriously infringing upon the New York Times, the Washington Post, Buffalo News, Business First.
So advice for your news consumer. Do you have any suggestions on how someone could spot fake news? Like these false stories that came out during the election?
Well, consumers have to be savvy, more so now, I think, than ever, because there are so many outlets for them to get their news from. I mean, it used to be, at least living in Buffalo, there were 2 newspapers and 3 television stations, and everybody got their news from the same, trusted, outlet. And now, of course, there's so much more out there with blogs and vlogs and social media, of course, kind of greasing the skids, so to speak. They just have to be very, very careful, and it's incumbent on everyone in society to be responsible, to be a responsible citizen and know where they're getting their information from, and not only consume the side that they agree with, but to consume all sides. And then many times there's more than 2 sides that they have to think about. So it's really it's really on everybody's shoulders to be media savvy.
Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. And more on the Buffalo Review TV.
You're watching the Buffalo Review TV, produced by Stripes Media. You can find out more about our show at our website, thebuffaloreview.wordpress.com, and we welcome your feedback. If you have a question, comment, or story idea, you can email us at thebuffaloreview@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the Buffalo Review TV. I'm Tiffany Channer. Dr. Bruce Berry, a senior fellow of the Child Trauma Academy in Houston, Texas, revealed that children exposed to domestic violence have lasting neurological and biological effects. For our viewers, neurological disorders are diseases of the brain, spine, and the nerves that connect them. Biological relating to biology or living organism. Genetically related by blood. With us today, we have Mary Murphy, the Executive Director of the Family Justice Center.
Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So, With everything that's going on with the Dr. Berry stating children exposed to domestic violence and having neurological and biological effects, what is your reaction to that?
Well, I think we've known for decades that people involved in abusive relationships, when they're victims of power and control, suffer from trauma. And the experts have been telling us for decades that children in the homes where this is going on, the stress level is so high that they're also experiencing trauma, even if they're not on the receiving end of the abuse. The stress in the household. That neuroscience that's been coming out for the last 6-7 years from across the globe is now telling us babies hours old, babies still in utero, and everybody else in the household literally experiencing a rewiring of the wires in their brains, setting them up for a lifetime of mental health conditions that they weren't born wired to get, and physical, critical illnesses they weren't born wired to get. Diabetes, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune diseases, literally the effects and the trauma involved in abusive relationships leaving a mark on our DNA. It's serious business.
That is very informing, and it's really serious, and I'm happy we brought this up with Dr. Berry's statement. So going on, how would you define domestic violence?
Power and control. One person attempting to control every aspect of another person's life. They do that through an array of highly effective methods: violence, the threat of violence, dangling that threat over the head of their victim, and an array of highly effective emotional, psychological, financial, sexual tactics, leaving their victims in a million pieces with zero sense of who they are, and brainwashed into believing they somehow deserve this abuse, they caused the abuse, and they're responsible for the abuse. And our message is clear. Nobody deserves to be in an abusive relationship. It sure as heck is not the victim's fault, and they didn't cause it. We're going to pin the blame where the blame belongs, and that's on the perpetrator, the control freak. So domestic violence, domestic abuse is all about power and control. Violence is just another tool in the toolbox of the abuser.
I definitely agree with you.
And a very effective tool, I may add.
Those two words are very strong: power and control. I definitely feel that really nails domestic violence. Also, does domestic violence happen in gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender relationships?
It happens in every type of intimate relationship, yes.
And also within the media and society, they only show women being victims to domestic violence. Can men experience domestic violence in relationships as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. The majority of victims are women, but the numbers are 1 in 3 girls in that early teen to early 20 age will be a victim of an abusive relationship, 1 in 4 women, and 1 in 7 boys and men. And we're talking every segment of society. We're out there talking about this every day. Family Justice Center never says no to a speaking engagement, and it doesn't matter if we're speaking in the swankiest country club in Clarence at high noon on a Saturday, in the most impoverished community center in the middle of the east or west side of Buffalo, or East Aurora, or any community in between. Those numbers play out every time we speak, everywhere we go. So these abusive relationships don't stop at any zip code or municipal line, at any level of education or affluence, at any age or race or religion or culture. We see them in every segment of society. Power and control.
Definitely agree with you on that. Also, do children experience domestic violence? Because most times, like in the media, it's always parents and
we're seeing kids
adults.
Younger and younger. When I first started the Family Justice Center, again, we cater to victims and their children, we were getting impassioned pleas from the high school. Get in here and teach these kids what a healthy relationship is. We, in the last 3 or 4 years, have been receiving calls from middle schools telling us, get in here and teach these kids what a healthy relationship is. They're mimicking in the hallways and with each other what they're seeing at home. So absolutely this affects kids.
Mm-hmm. And what are the factors that help children recover from domestic violence?
Well, if we're talking children who've been traumatized because they grew up with it, yes, we know that if there's a bright spot when it comes to this horror show on our society, it's that trauma-informed therapy is extremely effective. So at the Family Justice Center, where we take anything and everything somebody needs to escape an abusive relationship and put it in one place, we can link the victims of domestic violence and their children to trauma-informed therapy. And it's highly effective with respect to their capability, their capacity to heal.
Okay. And how can exposure to violence affect a child's developing brain?
Well, we just talked about that,
Yes.
right? Literally, the trauma rewires the wires in their brains, setting them up for a lifetime, in particular, mental health issues, lifelong depression. But again, that trauma-informed counseling by a therapist who's well-trained, using best practices, can rewire the brain and allowing them to get healthy mentally and physically.
And what advice would you give to victims in domestic violence that does not know how to get out?
Seek help. Call the Family Justice Center. We know the overwhelming emotion that a victim of domestic violence is experiencing that can trump fear, right? You leave, you're dead, or you leave, I'll kill those children. What could possibly trump that? What emotion? Fear, trumped by shame and embarrassment. And we have domestic violence advocates who are trained and educated and don't judge. And they can help people get their arms around what's happening. Most victims of domestic violence don't realize they're a victim. They just think somehow their behavior caused this bad behavior on the part of the perpetrator. They don't understand it's about power and control, and they've been brainwashed into believing they caused it. So reach out, sit down. We never, ever, ever tell our clients what to do. We just ask a series of questions so they can get their arms around what might be going on. Then we spell out all the services and let them decide. Our job is to put the power and control back in their laps and let them know you didn't deserve it, you sure as heck didn't cause it, and you're not responsible for it. And we know it takes 7 to 8 attempts to permanently leave, going back and forth 7 to 8 times before the average victim will leave the abuse. And we understand that too. And that's the trauma, right, playing into it.
That's really good what you guys do at the Family Justice Center. What is your guys' mission here for in Buffalo?
Our mission is to help victims and their children find safety and healing and safe havens, and most importantly, hope, right? That they can get out and they can get that trauma-informed counseling, they can heal, and someday get into a healthy relationship. Not with that perpetrator, though. Once a perpetrator, always a perpetrator. And I think we help them understand the person you fell in love with, who swept you off your feet, that angel, is not the real person. That's the fake. The real person is the monster who abuses.
Oh, that's very good. And also, with our ending question, at the Family Justice Center, can you go more in with the services that you guys apply for victims?
Well, sure. First of all, 5 domestic violence advocates who can help somebody get their head around what's going on. Is it abusive? Is it not? And if so, give them a safety plan and all the tools they need to get out. They may need an order of protection. Well, it's intimidating to go to family court and try to draft a petition to get that restraining order. We do it with them at the Family Justice Center and then Skype with the judges on the bench right from the Family Justice Center, so they don't have to endure that.
Thank you so much.
Buffalo Review TV, produced by Stripes Media. You can find out more about our show at our website, buffaloreview.wordpress.com, and we welcome your feedback. If you have a question, comment, or story idea, you can email us at thebuffaloreview@gmail.com.